Hello, everyone. My name is Dina Wengberg. I am an architect with Gensler, and I am here with my colleagues from Gensler and Parc Design Lab today to share with you all some insights on the field of architecture. So what is architecture? Well, at its core, architecture is both the process and the product of planning, designing, and constructing buildings and other structures. Something that really drew me in to architecture as a career was the combination of art and science. Architecture involves design and composition and color and materials, but also physics and geometry and technology. Historically, architecture evolved over the millennia as a form of expression of a civilization's culture, values, beliefs, power structure, as you can see here through many examples of religious structures, civic buildings, city gates, walls, fences, and other monuments. That expression of culture and civilization has continued even into contemporary architecture, now seen in things like skyscrapers, museums, monuments, housing. And over the millennia, the field of architecture has also greatly expanded. So, something to think about is that those who are interested in architecture may find themselves drawn to similar careers in such things as landscape architecture or furniture and product design, where you might look at the everyday devices that people use in their homes. Or you may be drawn to brand design or graphic design, or perhaps naval architecture or interior design down to the smaller details of an interior project. And in the design of buildings, architecture includes a broad range of what we call typologies or building types. So today, architects have opportunity to design and study and influence things on the scale of a sports arena all the way down to a single family home. So now I'll turn it over to Kevin.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kevin Tracy. I'm an architect with Gensler, and I'm going to talk about what architects do. So architects, at a very basic level, we help design the world around us. We have to be versed in many different subjects and skills, and we get to work on projects of all types and sizes. Now, some of those projects can range from very small pavilions to the very large towers. One of the things I like about architecture is that we get to work on all different types of buildings, different styles. We can be working on cities, stadiums, campuses, interior or exterior, and locations all over the world. So every day presents us with something new. And in terms of roles, there are many different roles when working on any of these projects. On a larger project, some of these roles might go to individual people. You'll have a designer, a code expert, an urban designer, an urban planner, an engineer, which we call a project architect, who helps put everything together, the manager running the business side of things, and then sustainability experts. So on any given project, we can have many different roles for people, or on a very small project, it could be one architect doing all of these roles for the project themselves. So an architect really has to know a lot of different subjects, and we're constantly learning about all different manner of things that affect the built environment. So one of the things that I like about architecture is getting to draw and getting to create things. And the way we do that throughout the process is through hand drawing. We do a lot of computer modeling. We do coordination, so we work quite a bit with other people. And then when the project finally gets into construction, we're making site visits and working with the contractor partners to make sure that everything that we've designed gets built smoothly. So it's a constant process of learning and communicating ideas and just meeting with different partners along the way. And within Gensler Raleigh, being that we live in such a growing and dynamic area, we've been fortunate to work on a number of different projects, sizes and scales, from office buildings to interiors to retail shops and plazas. So it's really, as an architect, you get to work on a number of different things, meet new people, go different places. So it's really a fun and interesting profession.
Hi, everybody. I'm Anna, and I'm an architect at Gensler. Now that you've been introduced to the field of architecture, we're going to take you through a project example that will give you a better idea of what architects do. The project we're going to share with you today is located in downtown Raleigh. The site is named for its block number within the city grid, dating all the way back to 1914. We've included a copy of that map here on the left-hand side of the slide and marked the location of the site with a blue star. In the aerial photo on the right, you can see the two buildings that now sit within the block and share a common courtyard in the middle. Today, we're going to zoom into the courtyard and show you the kiosk between the two buildings because it's a similar project type to the one you'll be working on this year. The image on the right is a rendering of the central courtyard. You can see the design of the retail kiosk in the lower left-hand corner of the image. Architects and designers use renderings to communicate ideas to their clients and to understand how a design will work when it was put into the context of its site. We collaborate with landscape architects to design the areas around the building, like paving, planter boxes, and benches. The site is just as important as the building itself, and you will have an opportunity to design your own site with your project. Buildings start with an idea and a purpose. A building's purpose is centered around how people will use it and how it's creating a better experience for its users. This is a retail kiosk and it's intended to have a cafe type program that can serve tenants from the two buildings along with the general public. Once we know a project's purpose, ideas start to form around how it should be situated and organized. The sketch on the left is an example of what we do during schematic design, a phase in the project when all ideas are on the table and the architects are working to arrive on the one idea that will push the project forward. Here's an example of some of the ideas we worked through when designing this kiosk. These are just 4 of the many that were presented to the client. We explored different shapes, layouts, and functions based on the program. During schematic design, it's important to push yourself on ideas and ask what if. It's the phase to really be creative and try new ideas, even if they may not work at first. On this page, you can see the different floor plans that correspond with the views we showed you before. You'll be creating floor plans like these for your project. We'll explain more about floor plans later, but we wanted to show you that these start on really early on in the process to understand scale and function of space. We work through floor plans to make sure the right spaces are next to one another so we can ensure the building will function well. After schematic design, we move into the next design phases where more and more detail is layered onto the initial idea until the full project is complete. Here are some photos of the final building. It evolved past all of those schematic ideas we showed you earlier. The central part of the cafe is enclosed program and the two ends open up as the outdoor space where patrons can enjoy their coffee and food. It can also be used as an outdoor work area throughout the day for the building tenants. You can see how integrated it is with the site design and how careful attention was paid to the user experience. Next, we're going to take you through the construction document phase and show you what drawings architects create in order to realize a building like this.
Hello, everyone. My name is Theron Bronson, and I'm a project architect at Parc Design Lab. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, graduated college from Kansas State University, and I've been practicing architecture for almost 10 years now. I'm going to elaborate on what Kevin discussed, what an architect does, by diving more into the case study Anna presented and show you some of the drawings created to communicate to the contractor. An architect not only has to design a building, he or she must create a set of instructions in order for that building to be built. Firstly, a set of construction documents contains two things. One, the actual drawing set, and two, a project manual with written instructions on how to construct the building and carry out the project. The drawing set or plans, as seen on the left-hand side of the screen, contain images that depict the actual building that's being built. Specifications that are part of the project manual, as seen on the right, contain written instructions on how to carry out the project and put those parts and pieces together. With construction drawings, the images are always to some scale, so that way they accurately depict the building or elements, and they can be measured from the actual drawing set if needed. You'll learn more about this later, but a common scale is 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. Basically what that means is every time the contractor measures 1/8 of an inch on the paper, it equals 1 foot in real life. Therefore, if the contractor measures 1 inch on paper, he or she knows that the element in real life will be 8 feet. The larger the fraction, the more zoomed in the drawing is. Again, you'll learn more about this later. In order for a contractor to be able to lay out a building, one of the first drawings he or she will need is an architectural site plan that shows where to place the building on the site. Usually a reference point to the property line or a marker on the site will be used in order to dimension the building to the actual site. You can see here that the reference point is at the intersection of these two property lines in red. The architectural site plan will show adjacent buildings, property lines, sidewalks, roads, while other site plans in the drawing set provided by other parties like the civil engineer will show utilities and other pertinent information to the project. The next set of drawings will be the floor plan as seen on the left and the reflected ceiling plan shown on the right. These two drawings are horizontal cuts through the building showing what it would look like if you sliced the building horizontally and looked either up or down. Think of it like a hamburger bun. The ceiling plans are called reflected ceiling plans because they are flipped in order to align with the floor plan to make them easier to read. If they weren't mirrored, the information would be on the opposite side. Again, imagine a hamburger bun and opening it up and how it would be flipped. These plans show the horizontal X and Y dimension relationship of columns, walls, doors, and they provide dimensions so that way the contractor can lay out the building accordingly. Sometimes references to heights are shown for ceilings and other elements if they're not called out elsewhere in the drawings. The next set of drawings provided are elevations on the left and sections as seen on the right. An elevation is an image of each side or face of the building, almost like you took a straight-on photograph. These drawings show the vertical relationships of elements in the Z direction, and they help the contractor in order to know the heights of different areas of the building. Sometimes elevations will show horizontal dimensions if there's something very specific that needs to be called out. Sections are also provided, which are vertical cuts to the building, almost like a sliced loaf of bread, that show the interior spaces of the building. Because buildings are complicated, zoomed in drawings called wall sections and details are needed to show the assemblies of the envelope of the building. The envelope, also sometimes called the skin, are the exterior materials that enclose the building. There are several layers and parts that all work together, hence why it's called an actual assembly. Here you can see a wall section to the left and a roof to wall detail, which is called a parapet. To touch on scale quickly, the wall section shown on the left is 1/2 of an inch equals a foot, where the detail on the right is 3 inches equals a foot. Lastly, architects will sometimes provide diagrammatic three-dimensional drawings called axonometrics. These images provide the contractor with a 3D depiction of the building or item to better understand it. Sometimes you see that there'll be just certain parts and pieces shown, and sometimes they'll show the actual whole building. Now I'm going to pass it off to Ryan to discuss precedents.
Thank you, Theron. My name is Ryan Kavanaugh, and I'm an architect with Gensler. Let's chat about the importance of precedents in the creative process. You've probably heard the phrase that something is unprecedented, meaning something has never happened before, or there's no historical context for something like that to have occurred. Context is very important when it comes to design. It's what allows designers to be creative and seek out incrementally new ideas or methods of building something. This means you can totally borrow a great idea or technique from a similar design, but what's important is that you make it uniquely your own. Check out the examples of churches on the screen. Keep in mind that architects and engineers looked for inspiration from what others had done before them, but in the end, these are all examples of a church nave spanning about 1,500 years. You can see the evolution from round arches to pointed arches to some pretty crazy arches on the right. The one on the right is the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, and it's still under construction today. It's evident where inspiration was drawn from and how the design teams were able to learn from the past to draw inspiration for the future. So taking a look at your project, this more square burger example might be familiar to you since it's located right here in Raleigh. This is simply a small structure that could be fabricated off-site and anchored on-site with minimal construction. You can see between the top and the bottom left a difference in transparency, likely due to the function inside. So the restaurant at Square Burger wants you to see all the activities so you know that you're welcome to come inside and spend money. Whereas this other example on the bottom left likely has something much different, like an office or bathrooms or changing rooms or something they don't want just the general public to walk in and see. The two images in the middle are still on a trailer, so they feel much less permanent, but see how they fold open to create larger spaces during the day? You can see the top example is a partnership between Levi and Urban Outfitter focused on cycling. Sometimes on projects like these, it helps to think about a client and who that client might be, so you can start to choose design elements around what you think might work for that client and their brand. Lastly, you can see 3 examples of shipping containers on the far right. So what's interesting here is looking at how they look a lot larger than a shipping container. You can see how they expand into the exterior and make the space feel much larger. I know you're limited in size with the program, but you can get creative with what space is fabricated off-site and perhaps what's a furniture solution, something that you store inside and you can bring out during open hours to help make your space feel larger and more welcoming to the park. The next example is by Lab Architects in Hong Kong. It's inspired by local market stalls in China, which expand and engage with the public when they're open and return to their compact form when closed. So the gate over the retail counter opens into an awning during open hours. Each of these wood fins is a robotic arm that moves throughout the day subtly to mimic the water in the adjacent harbor. This particular kiosk also houses some infrastructure for the surrounding public space. Perhaps your kiosk could house a cistern, and you could use that to irrigate the landscape area around the kiosk. So when thinking about precedents, take a look online at sites like ArcDaily. You can learn a lot about projects on this website and easily search from thousands of projects around the world to help draw inspiration from. Dustin?
Hey everyone, my name is Dustin Brugman and I'm an architect at Gensler. We're going to look at a few bridge precedents and extract some specific takeaways from them. So at first glance, this is a utilitarian bridge that allows cars, cyclists, pedestrians to cross it safely. And you'll notice it doesn't really stand out in the crowd, but it does get the job done. Take a closer look at some of the detailing. There were a lot of simple design decisions with a lot of impact, like how the safety fencing appears to hover above the concrete, or even that difference in concrete curb between the pedestrians and the cyclists that makes the experience safer. It really grows on you, and even like the care of how the bridge looks at night was carefully considered in this project. Next, this bridge by the same designers in Kansas City, Missouri, crosses over some busy railroad tracks, and it appears to reuse an old railroad truss. And note the juxtaposition or the mashup of all the different textures of glass, metal, concrete, the glass of the elevator right here, and the stairs and the kind of pedestrian path is all clad in metal. The pedestrian has to go up vertically very quickly in order to get across safely. So that was kind of like the main concept in this. Lastly, perhaps you don't want your bridge to be in a straight line from A to B. Maybe you want to incorporate some more curvilinear lines or even a mast-like structure that helps hold the bridge up, like you'd see in a sailboat. Once you've decided on form and kind of the route that you want to take, really think about those details of at the human scale and how really simple, elegant design can really make that journey across more beautiful, like in this detail right here, which is a close-up of the railing right here. And we also just wanted to quickly introduce you and help you start to consider some sustainable strategies And the earlier you do that, the better, because every decision you make will really affect, a lot of potential you have for being off grid or self-sustaining. And that has to do with like how you orient your building to allow the most sunlight, and maybe solar panels, or how you're collecting rainwater, or just kind of really interacting with the environment around you. And so, in a future ACE session, we'll cover and elaborate on a number of those strategies and things you could do. And we'll introduce you to the lead, for example. But just wanted to quickly introduce you to a couple active and passive strategies, like I was just mentioning about the solar orientation, and really just being conscious and aware of what you can use in the environment to make your building or your bridge better for the environment and for for sustainability purposes. So, we really want you to think big about your project first off, and we'll get into a number of these things. The engineers will love talking about all these fixtures and systems that you can use. There's plenty of things to go over, but think about those big picture ideas first, and we'll get to some of these really interesting things that we can integrate into our buildings later. And so in conclusion, we just want to thank you for listening and listening to us explain what architecture is, because we could have lectured for days if you really let us, and you're welcome for sparing you of that pain. We do hope this adds some context to the lessons we have for you coming up, and it really gives you some perspective and inspiration to get your project started. So thanks.